Thanks very much. Now, if there's a Conservative MP on your family Christmas list, you might think of buying him a book for Christmas called Nudge. It's been a big hit with some at the top of the party, including David Cameron, because it suggests that governments can make people change their behaviour on everything from turning out to vote to recycling waste by giving them a little nudge in the right direction. We'll hear from one of the authors in a moment. First, here's our political editor, Michael Crick.
In life, we face an array of choices, often enticing. Often, though, we get them wrong. Now, the theory of helping people make better choices in their own interests and in the public interest has been taken up by governments. I'm told that the first senior British Conservative to spot the nudge agenda, even before the book was published, was David Willits. He mentioned it to David Cameron's advisor, Steve Hilton, and it duly was brought to the attention of Mr. Cameron himself. But it's not just under the Cameron government that nudge has been having an impact. Even in the closing years of Labour, nudge was having a certain influence within Whitehall thinking. And there was a particular champion under Labour in the form of the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Gus O'Donnell, who in the same job under this government has been pursuing nudge with even greater enthusiasm, I understand.
I think one of the problems with a nanny state, and there are quite a few, is often it just doesn't work. For example, we have a rule that says that you can't serve drunk people in pubs, and that must be one of the least enforced rules of all time. And a bit like the Danish lager, potentially nudging lets you refresh the parts of the political system that other policies can't reach. It lets you challenge things like the rising tendency towards obesity. It lets you deal with things like, for example, organ donation. So, for example, I would like to be an organ donor. I've never registered as one because I've never got around to it. But if, like in California, someone asked me when I was renewing my driving license, do you want to be an organ donor? Then I'd probably do it.
All policy tries to shape behaviour. So if we're going to shape behaviour, it's as well that we do it on a realistic account of human nature. And nudge tells us that many of the things that we do are more idiosyncratic than we might imagine. We don't just respond to crude material incentives or laws. So in as much as nudge gives us a more sophisticated understanding of human nature and improves the quality of policy, well, it's a good thing.
But you've got misgivings as well.
I think the problem with nudge is it's a great idea, and we've seen some applications of it. For example, the idea that we're opted into pensions because people aren't very good at the long term. They want to put money into a pension, they never get round to it. That's great. We're a bit short of other examples.
Indeed, ministers are thinking of nudge in just three main fields so far: the environment and especially carbon reduction, social action, giving time and money, and public health, as in this week's white paper.
It's time for politicians to stop telling people to make healthy choices, time to start actually helping them to do it. There will be a profound shift in tone, attitude and outlook. Rather than nannying people, we will nudge them by working with industry to make healthy lifestyles easier.
Look, I think the whole theory is nonsense. It's nonsense on stilts. One might say bollocks on stilts.
John McTernan was one of Tony Blair's advisers in Downing Street.
It's an anti-government nonsense. The biggest advances in public health in Britain since the war have been the Clean Air Act, a ban on burning fuel, and secondly, banning smoking. And these guys, Thaler and his mate, they are opposed to bans. I asked them and they said they wouldn't have brought in a Clean Air Act in London, saved thousands of lives. They wouldn't have banned smoking. That's the problem. It's actually an evasion of the necessary duty of government to say we can nudge people this way or that way. And people use lots of different explanations of why we need to do it, but basically it's a failure of faith in government.
Libertarian paternalism, they call it. How to get us to eat our greens without lectures, laws or conflict. But the potential's rather limited. One shouldn't overdo it, a senior number 10 advisor told me. It's not a silver bullet.
Michael Crick, I'm joined now by one of the co-authors of Nudge, Richard Thaler. John McTernan's point was, among other things, look, if you want to get things done, you ban smoking in public places, you make people belt up and buckle up in a car with a seat belt, you make sure the air is clean and so on. That's how you do things. You don't nudge people into those.
Well, I thought we learned that lesson in America in the 1920s. We tried prohibition. It was a complete disaster. So I don't think it's the role of government to tell everybody what they should do. And seatbelt laws, we really started with buzzers that nudge us to buckle up. And I think we can help people make better decisions without telling them what to do.
Well, explain to me one thing. You know, we heard Andrew Lansley saying we're going to nudge people, not nanny them. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is that we're not going to pass laws saying you can't eat fast food, you can't do this, you can't do that.
But nobody's going to say do that, though, were they? Nobody's going to say you can't eat fast food.
Oh, of course.
Not as a law. You know, no more McDonald's hamburgers. Nobody's going to do that.
Well,
no
there are many people trying to propose laws to ban this sort of food or that sort of food, and we have all kinds of laws on the books.
But you see, when I read your book, enjoyed it, very provocative, made me think, all good things. But then, you know, start thinking, this is the sort of stuff that nannies and parents do. They say, eat your greens, you know, eat your crusts that make your hair curly, do the right thing at school, you get a star. Those are all nudges. That's what nannies do.
Yeah, but that's the difference. No, that's nannying. Nudging is making the spinach taste a little better. And the kids will like it better and will enjoy it.
But I mean, it is of limited value, isn't it? It's good that you get people to do good things. That's what religions do that. You know, it's a good thing for them to do that. But to achieve big things, you can't do it by nudging people, can you?
Well,
really big things.
No, I disagree. Take the environment. There are lots of little things we can do. If we are going to deal with climate change, it will be one small step at a time. I met with people today in the energy department who are trying to think about how to get people to insulate their lofts. You know, that in and of itself won't solve climate change or dependence on oil, but it will help. In America, we get on my bill, on my electric bill, I'm told how much my neighbors are spending. And if I see I'm out of line, I'll say, well, maybe I ought to cut down.
Well, if you see you're out of line and you're spending less, then maybe you'll say, well, maybe I can spend a bit more. You know,
well,
it may nudge in the other direction.
Yeah, we can handle that too. We give them a little smiley face, and that's enough.
Well, do you think smiley faces will save the planet? I suppose that's really what I'm asking. Things like Clean Air Act, the big, giving women the vote. It wasn't a nudge. It was actually a law. Finally, that people decided. The big things in life are decided by governments doing that, aren't they?
I'm not saying that we can accomplish everything with a nudge. The purpose of writing the book was to say, how far can we go without bans and mandates? We have laws against murder. I'm in favor of that. We have laws against lots of things. We have laws against drunk driving. But we're not going to ban alcohol. So where is the middle ground? Where can we take steps that will help government achieve its goals more efficiently without telling everybody what they have to do?
How seriously is this being taken in Westminster by our coalition government now, do you think?
Very seriously. I've spent the last 3 days marching around or having people parading into the Behavioral Insight team, and they are genuinely interested. I'll give you one example. There are people in the Treasury Department whose job it is to get people who owe taxes to pay their taxes. With the help of a behavioral scientist, they changed the letter they send. That has brought in hundreds of millions of pounds. Why wouldn't we do that?
Okay, on that note, we'll leave it. Richard Thaler, thanks very much. Now, tomorrow morning's front page is in a moment. First, the run-up of today's other news, and the Business Secretary, Vince